Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy. I hope you're doing really well wherever or whenever in the world that you are. I'm excited. Today I'm coming back with another this or that style video. I had a blast doing the romance edition of this tag, and I was wondering if there was a fantasy version of this existing out in the world today. I did a little research. I couldn't find anything. So I took inspiration from, I believe it was a few years ago at this point. I've seen videos of booktubers post the tier ranking of their favorite fantasy tropes. The ones that come to mind for me are the ones from Peruse Project, and I think it might have been Daniel Green, maybe. I'll link their channels down below or those videos if you want to check them out for yourself. Like I said, I had an absolute blast doing this with romance tropes. So I love fantasy too. So I figure, let's do it. Now, with this little game, obviously some of these tropes are not mutually exclusive. There are certainly books or book series that might have one or both of these happening at the same time. So this is more just the spirit of like, if a book only had this main trope, like which would I rather spend time with? Which would I rather experience? Which would I rather read? Yeah, there is no right or wrong. There are no real rules. So if you decide to do this tag, which you absolutely should, I'd be curious to hear either in the comments or in other people's videos what their preferences are. Yeah, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. As I'm going through the this or that, I'll try to include as many like books or book series that I can think of that fit those tropes as much as I can. I'll pop them on the screen here or wherever. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping things. Let's get into the tag. The first this or that is standalone or series. This feels like a really easy one for me personally because I'm always gonna choose a series. I feel like I love that you get the opportunity to really spend a lot of time with your favorite characters or your favorite magic systems or your favorite worlds. I love when a series is really vast and like really sprawling. I love when there's a fantasy series that has a map in the beginning. It's just so satisfying to see characters' arcs grow and change across multiple books. Like I love being part and witness to that evolution of characters or character dynamics, especially, when a villain transforms into something more complex, a hero transforms into something more complex. I just love that series give you so much more time to be with these characters and be in these worlds. Some of my favorites, last year I read the Rhaeria Revelation series by Michael J. Sullivan, and I love that series. I also loved the Bear and the Nightingale trilogy by Catherine Arden. That one is so atmospheric. The world building is really interesting. Vasya is an excellent main character. I loved the Russian folklore, I really did. I also enjoyed the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I mean, I have mixed feelings about Fitz, but in general, I thought that was a really interesting and dynamic trilogy. I really liked An Ember in the Ashes by Sava Tahir. That was also a really fun, dynamic series where I felt like there was a lot of mythology that was sort of new to me at the time, so I was so immersed in that. I loved the strong female protagonist. I think that's a really fun series. I could go on and on and on about like a million different fantasy series that I love, but I do want to name, although it's not my preference, there are certainly standalones that I still really enjoy, like Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. That was the first Brandon Sanderson that I read, and I loved it. It was such a unique magic system. I thought the relationship between the two sisters, those main characters, was so interesting. There's a lot of humor and just creativity, all fit into one relatively chunky but still manageable book. It was so good. I also loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I read that one sort of at like one of the heights of the pandemic, and it just hit me deep when I read it. I feel like I cried multiple times while reading it, but it was like a tragic cry, but it's what I needed in the moment. So I loved that standalone. And I've been really wanting to read The Sword of Kaigen, but I have the audiobook downloaded. I will eventually get to it, eventually. The next this or that is multi-POV or single POV. I'm almost always going to prefer a multi-POV story. I just appreciate the different perspectives so much. It gives so much more insight onto like what's going on in the world, the relationships, like how people fit and feel about them. I always prefer that. And like some of my least favorite books tend to be that single POV. Like I read The Name of the Wind a few years ago and I didn't love it. And I think part of it is because, you know, we're hearing the story from, I'm forgetting what his name is, but like the whole story is like written from his perspective, like him telling his story. And I don't love the unreliable narrator, even possibility. So I like multi-POV because I just feel like it's a little more reliable sometimes. Yeah, and sometimes I just get kind of bored just only being in one person's mind the whole time. Some of my favorite like multi-POV stories, this is like a really basic answer, but I loved Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I thought that was so fun. I'm brain farting and I can't think of any others right now, but I know there are like a gazillion. The next is YA or adult, and I like both, but I think if I'm gonna choose one over the other, I'll probably almost always choose adult. I like that there's a little darker themes, there's a little more explicit content. I just find that I've said a little like 5 times. I find it more compelling. That's what I'm trying to say. I find adult writing, storytelling, content more interesting. I'm a full-grown adult, so I'm just finding that as I've gotten older, I'm more drawn towards adult POVs, adult stories, the adult age range, if you will. I do think if you're just getting into fantasy, that YA can be a great first step or a little stepping stone of some kind because the worlds feel a little less enormous and sometimes there's fewer characters, so it's a little easier to keep track of like all that's going on. The magic systems are still really cool. There's of course still lots of great plot twists and turns. So yeah, lots to love about YA, but I tend to prefer adult these days. The next this or that is physical or audio listening or reading. And I feel like my initial reaction is audio, but if I'm being honest with myself, when I'm reading fantasy books or series, the best way for me to stay engaged and like keep track of all the stuff that's going on is to listen while I'm physically reading it or reading it on my ebook. I love audiobooks for fantasy because I appreciate that I can hear how characters' names are pronounced, how kingdoms and lands, like how you say those things. But I also know that in those chunkier fantasy series that sometimes there's maps or graphics or footnotes and things like that. And so it's nice to also have the physical like alongside. But if I had to choose, no one is surprised to hear me say I would always rather listen to a book. No shame. Next is person on the cover or objects on the cover. Now, for fantasy series, I don't know if I have a preference for this one. I kind of love the really cheesy, quintessential fantasy objects like crowns and swords and, I don't know, daggers or whatever. But I also like when you've got this like sweeping landscape with like one character on the cover. I don't know which one I prefer. You know what? I'm gonna say people on the cover for this one, mostly because some of my more recent favorite covers for fantasy books or series happen to have that. Like I love the UK editions of the Mistborn series. I love the Poppy War covers. So yeah, I think I'm gonna say people. The next this or that is high fantasy or low fantasy. this is an easy one for me. I want all of the magic. I want the world I'm reading about to be nothing like the world I live in. I want all of the mythical creatures and races and crazy unique magic systems. I want epic high fantasy almost always. There are certainly urban fantasy or low fantasy stories that I love. Like, I really liked Ninth House, Harry Potter, of course. But yeah, in general, I love epic fantasy. It is so fun to read and to be in. Recently, I've loved Black Sun by Rebecca. I'm forgetting her name. Rebecca something. You'll see it on the screen, so there it is. I liked the Red Queen series. I thought that was really interesting, although I did read that a while ago, so it's been probably like 5 or 6 years since I read that series, but I did really like it at the time. The 5th season, although I didn't love that trilogy, I can acknowledge that the world building and the epicness of it is fantastic. Or like anything Brandon Sanderson writes. I love it. I love epic fantasy. I want all the magic. It's gotta be high fantasy. Okay, the next one is a quest or a heist main plot line. And I think I am gonna be team heist. Don't get me wrong, I like and appreciate a quest or a journey. Those are great. It's such a standard, a staple in the fantasy genre. But unless an author is doing something really new and unique along the journey or with the quest, I just find heists so much more exciting. I feel like that inherently creates a lot of tension and drama throughout the book. Yeah, anytime I see heist as like a buzzword in a summary or on a Goodreads book review, I feel like automatically I'm like, do I need to read this? I recently read Lies of Locke Lamora and I loved it. Six of Crows obviously has a heist at the center. I think Foundry Side by whoever that guy is, those all have heists at the center and they're all really, really interesting and like keep you on the edge of your seats. And I just feel so much more invested when we're like trying to do something impossible or, you know, steal the impossible object or pull off some con. Those plot lines are so fun for me. And I just find the quest or the journey a little overdone. I feel like if you really, really like the main character or the main characters, then a quest or going on a long journey is kind of the best because you're just spending time with the characters. But I can't really think of any of those stories that are like really sticking with me right now that are like my absolute favorites. So yeah, for this one, heist. The next one is gonna be magical object or a magical creature. Although I love a magical object, like a weapon with really special witchy magical powers, like from the Blade of Secrets, or when an object comes to life or, you know, has human characteristics, like from Foundry Side the Key. I think I prefer magical creatures. I'm just thinking like I love an animal companion or a sidekick. You know, give me a dragon or a special kind of wolf or anything in that realm. I'm into that. Yeah, when I recently read Nettle and Bone, the little bone dog sidekick was like my favorite character in the whole story. I think I'm gonna say magical creature for this one. Next is dark fantasy or whimsical fantasy. And I mean, I love both. I need both in my life. If I read too many whimsical fancies in a row, like I become desperate for a change of pace. And if I read too many dark fantasies in a row, it puts me in a weird headspace. So I need balance. I need to have both in my life, but with breaks, you know, in between. Although as I'm saying this answer out loud, yes, I want balance, but I feel like whimsical stories are kind of always my jam, while dark depends on my headspace. So maybe actually I put whimsical. Like I recently read Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater and it was such a fun time. It put me in the best mood. House on the Cerulean Sea was really whimsical and sweet. But, you know, I've also been wanting to read some darker stuff like the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie or whatever his name is, you know, because we love a morally gray character. So I love and need both of them in my life, but if I had to pick one to reign supreme, I'd say whimsical fantasy. All right, the next one is the chosen one trope versus the secret heir. And I'm so basic. I live for a chosen one trope. It never gets old to me. It never feels overdone to me. I always enjoy it. It's so comfortable and familiar. And, you know, who doesn't wish that they were the chosen one, you know? I do like the secret heir trope, like especially if it's revealed later on, like that character didn't know and then it's revealed that they're like the secret heir to a kingdom or a secret whatever. But again, if I had to choose between the two, I love a chosen one trope so much. And it definitely all started from Harry Potter. I mean, for me anyways, that's like the OG. What other ones have really good chosen one tropes? I think City of Brass has a really satisfying chosen one trope. I don't know if these count, but like Hunger Games and like Divergent come to mind. Loved those. Obviously, like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I can't think of any others, but you can't go wrong with the chosen one, in my opinion. The next one is political fantasy or fantasy romance. Now, once again, for me, the sweet spot is I want a fantasy romance that has some political machinations and court scheming. But if I had to choose, I'm a sucker for a fantasy romance. I mean, I recently did tier ranking all of the fantasy romances that I've read recently. You should go check it out. Shameless plug. I'll link it however they do it in the cards above, blah, blah, blah. You know, it'll be there if you want to look at it. Ooh, the sun has, oh my goodness. I turned my head. Let's see if sweet relief. What was I saying? Okay. About fantasy romance. I love an epic high fantasy romance with like a high spice smut factor. Like those books are addicting to me. They bring me so much joy and calm. I love them. I love them so much. The next one is a magical school setting of some kind or a mythology, fairy tale retelling. I think if you asked me this like 5 years ago, I probably would have said the magic school. However, in recent years, I've really enjoyed all the different retellings that I've come across. I love being immersed in other cultural lore and legends. I feel like it's nice when a story is familiar enough that it relaxes my thinking a bit, but brings something new to the characters or the theme or the story or whatever that still feels really engaging and compelling. I feel like last year maybe I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmerer, and that's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. That was so interesting. I didn't move on in the series because I didn't really feel the need to, but I loved that first book. I loved Daughter of the Forest that I read recently, and I think it's kind of a loose retelling of the Six Swans legend. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's right. I love Guild. That's a King Midas retelling. I love a Hades and Persephone retelling. I also love when you get a non-Western kind of retelling, like when you get different lore or mythical creatures or myths from different cultures around the world. This wasn't my favorite, but I did recently read The Girl Beneath the Sea by Axie O. Although I didn't love that story, the mythology and the imagery, like that was so amazing and interesting to like be in. The next is, as your main character, do you want them to be an assassin of some kind or some kind of magical being? I love a badass assassin main character. I'm looking at you, Selena Sardathian. But again, if I have to choose between the two, I think I prefer when the character has some kind of unique magical ability. This, I think, kind of aligns with the chosen one preference, which totally makes sense as I'm saying it out loud. I love when the main character has, you know, it's like a once in a generation kind of ability, or we thought this power was extinct, or, you know, whatever. Like, that is so fun to me. I'm thinking of Ren from Mistborn. She's a badass. Terasai from Raybearer. I loved her as the main character with her unique ability. Bryce from Crescent City was interesting. I'm thinking about the main character from The Red Queen. I love a main protagonist with really unique magical abilities. I know that there's a million more. Those are the only ones I can think of top of mind. This next one is mostly when we're thinking about fantasy romance, but I guess it could apply across all of the different kind of fantasy series and settings out there. Fated mates or an arranged marriage. I love an arranged marriage situation. I love that the forced proximity always does really interesting things to characters' relationships and their dynamics and their understanding of one another. Like, sometimes they start as enemies or rivals and they grow into something different. Sometimes they start as friends and it blossoms into more. Sometimes it leans towards something dramatic and backstabby. I love all of those scenarios. Let me think. Some of my favorites are, I love the arranged marriage in the Bridge Kingdom series. It is excellent. I like the arranged marriage in Radiance. That's more of like a friends to lovers rather than like an enemies or rivals to lovers. I don't know if this one counts, but it's my video and I'm gonna put it here anyways. Outlander, you know, when Claire has to marry Jamie for reasons. Love that. Fated mates sometimes bothers me because like the consent element sometimes feels like it's lacking. Like, they're not actively choosing their partners. It's like they have no choice. It's fate, it's destiny. Like, that doesn't feel as real to me. I also feel like with fated mates, there tends to be like this super possessive, aggro, like alpha male character, and that's not my jam these days. But I will say, I do love the ACOTAR series, and that is steeped in fated mate stuff. So I guess it depends. If it's done really well, I enjoy it. But generally speaking, I'd rather read a story about some kind of arranged marriage than fated mates. Sorry, my cat is playing in the blinds. So sorry if you can hear her or if she does crazy things with the lighting. Yeah, I'm talking about you. The last one is the wise mentor or the found family trope. I live for a found family situation. It is such a feel-good dynamic. There are a million books with found family stuff going on. The most recent one, which I've already mentioned in this video, is The Lies of Locke Lamora. I just love found family because people would like do anything for their people. And I love it. I live for it. I'm pretty indifferent to the wise mentor. I mean, I guess if I'm reading something middle grade or YA, like the wise mentor archetype has a time and a place, but generally speaking, like I could take it or leave it. All right, that is it. That is the this or that fantasy edition. I hope you had fun. I love these kinds of videos. They're really fun, kind of chatty, just to share, you know, what I love, what I don't love, because mostly I want to hear from you all. Do we have things in common? What differing opinions do we have? Of course, leave those comments down below. If you have any book recommendations based on some of the things that I really love, I always want to see those in the comment section. Can you hear Frances? She's so cute. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you if you made it this far. Thank you so much for watching these silly videos. I have so much fun making them and talking about books and bookish things. So I just appreciate you so much. If you want to like and subscribe, that is always wonderful. But if you're just passing through, that's cool too. Yeah, that's all I got. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.